Bard on the Plains podcast with Mike McPeak. It's about stories, mine and yours.
My son Ryan and I have a tradition. Every Friday night he calls and we talk. Sometimes it's to plan the next day when we go to Watertown to shop with him, my wife, and my other son Eric. The rest of the time we talk about how our respective week was, things at work, or what we've been doing on the computer. This one night he called me while I was at work setting up for a wrestling tournament. I wear a Bluetooth headset so I can talk to him while I work, so you don't have to worry about me wasting taxpayers' money. Anyway, he had just gotten the video game Farm Simulator 2019. I have Farm Simulator 2017, but they are quite similar. I really love that game and haven't played it in a while because I have developed an addiction to the Borderlands video game. Maybe I need to enter a 12-step program, like take 12 steps away from the game. But back to my son. He had just installed the game and he was learning how to play it, so he was asking me. Since I was at work and therefore didn't have the game in front of me, I was working from memory, so we were in trouble. As he was figuring things out, I was telling him how the game compared to real life since I was the resident farming expert in this call. I do like the game because it allows me to scratch that farming itch I still have without going massively into debt. I mean, $60 for a game versus $60,000 for a tractor, plus buying the other equipment, plus buying seed, plus fuel, plus taxes, plus all the regulations. Sorry, I was having a horrible flashback there. So anyway, cheaper and less of a headache, but still fun to play. I wish I had a virtual reality version you could play by putting on a headset so you have the feeling of sitting inside the cab and actually using the controls. We were discussing the differences between the game and what I had done on the farm. Plowing in the game is different. First, a little explanation for those who don't know what a plow is. It's an instrument to turn the ground over. It's designed to go underneath the surface and roll the dirt over. There are many people associated with the development of the moldboard plow, but the most famous is John Deere. The plow he created helped build the company into the machine giant that it is today. Plows were widely used up to the latter part of the 20th century when they fell out of favor because they exposed the soil to too much erosion and instead being supplanted by minimum tillage and no-till practices. The plows used in the game are double furrow or reversible plows. What this means is that you put the plow in the ground and you head toward the other side of the field. When you get to the other end, you would rotate the plow over to use the other set of plow bottoms that would throw dirt in the other direction, and you would drive back on the same side you had come down on. The plows I used on the farm were called single furrow plows, meaning that it cuts the soil. As it cuts the soil, it would roll the dirt to the right, leaving a furrow as the plow moved forward. When you got to the other end of the field, you would go to the other side of what you had plowed and went back. What this meant was that you were going in circles with an ever-expanding area of tilled ground that you had to drive across to get to the other side. This would leave a furrow or a rut as the plow passed, so when you came back to that side, you would put the tires of the right side of the tractor in the furrow. This made plowing rather easy because you weren't always looking over your shoulder to see if that you were wandering too far off and leaving soil untilled. When you first started plowing, you would start about 20 yards from the edge of the fence line and strike out a land. You would line yourself up at a 90-degree angle with the edge of the field. You would then look to the other side of the field and find something to line up with. Sometimes it would be a tree or a fence post or maybe a rock, but never a cow. Because if the cow started walking and you follow it, you would end up going kittywampus across your field. The reason you did this is so that when you're going down the field, you wouldn't wander too far in either direction. The idea is to keep the land that you're plowing at a parallel line with the edge of the field so that by the time you reach the edge of the field, you don't end up with a wedge-shaped piece of land that you would have to drive back part way to finish off. It is a point of pride amongst farmers to be able to get to the fence line and not have any land you have to go back to plow. Once you get to the fence, you start the process again, lining up parallel with the land you just tilled. You repeat this going all the way across the field until you are done. You would then make several passes across the end to make sure that they were nice and neat. We farmers would silently judge each other on our tidiness of our plowing. One of the differences between the game and real life is that there's no rocks in the game. On our farm, you couldn't spit without hitting a rock. Some of them were somewhat small, maybe about the size of a baseball or softball. These were a little annoying, but not too bad. Other rocks were bigger and caused problems. Some of them could be the size of a large watermelon or even bigger. Our plow was an automatic reset. If it would hit a rock, the bottom would come up out of the ground, pass over the rock, and then the springs would force it back into the soil. Older plows had a shear bolt that was designed to break if the plow hit a big rock. It was cheaper to replace a bolt than it was a new plow bottom. The problem was you'd have to stop to replace the bolt. With the automatic reset, you could just keep on plowing. Once you got your land struck out, I kind of liked plowing. With the John Deere tractor we had, the cab had air conditioning and a radio. I could put the tire in the furrow and just sit back and relax, maybe sing along with the songs on the radio. Usually rock music. I know, the irony. And until I would get to the end of the field and go to the other side. It also gave a person some time to contemplate. You might plan what you were going to do next when you finished this field, but you could also daydream as long as you paid attention to the machinery. You could watch the wildlife as it coexisted with you in the moment. In the spring, you might see a deer with a fawn. A couple times I saw coyotes that wandered near the tractor, and once I saw a bald eagle soar overhead. There were all these signs of nature that reminded you that there was more than just you in the world. But there were still problems sometimes. The plow would break and needed to be repaired. To save money, I would do my own repair work. Parts would have to be bought and replaced. Other times something would break and I would have to weld it. My welding skills were acceptable, sturdy enough to hold but none too pretty. When you were done using the plow for the season, you would put either a light coat of paint or smear some grease on the plow bottom so they wouldn't rust. If you were lazy like I was sometimes, they would rust and you would have to scour them and make them shiny again. If you didn't, the ground wouldn't turn over nicely like it should. It would instead just push it and make piles of dirt that would leave the field rough and bumpy. There's a lot about farming that I don't miss, like the long hours, the hard working conditions, and the constant financial worries. But I do miss operating the equipment. There's just something about operating equipment that I like. Maybe it's the fact that the machinery is just an extension of me, sitting in the operator's chair, orchestrating the movement of this complex contraption with just a movement of my arms and a flick of the wrist. Knowing that I have this power at my command, or that I can do more in 1 hour than my grandfather could do in 1 day. But it was also being part of something bigger. Knowing that I was part of the 2% that fed this nation and made it possible for others to pursue a way of life that allowed them to improve our standard of living through advancements in medicine, technology, and the arts. That made it possible to spend more time with their families rather than foraging for food so they could survive. So while I do miss operating the equipment and the feeling of being part of something bigger, I don't really miss farming a whole lot. The farm simulator is just what I need. It's immersive enough that it allows me to relive old memories without the hassle of real life intruding. The thing about reliving old memories is that looking back, they seemed a lot better now than they actually were.
If you have a story you'd like to tell, contact Mike on Twitter @BardOnThePlains or by email at bardontheplains@gmail.com. For more information about the stories in this podcast, visit bardontheplains.com.